Welcome to the Regulation Podcast from the Institute of Regulation. My name is Marcy Albu, Chair of the Institute and a regulator myself. This is December's Regulation Podcast, so many people are looking ahead to Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year and a holiday, whether a winter holiday or a summer holiday if you're listening in the Southern Hemisphere. It's a time for family, maybe for a breather. It's also a time for presents and for food and drink. And to discuss the regulation of some of the stuff we consume at Christmas, we have guests at our table from the Advertising Standards Authority and the Food Standards Agency, whose organisations are responsible for regulating the advertising of the presents we buy and the food we eat, including goodies we don't normally consume and which we have to trust are legal and safe. Our guests today are Dr. Claire Forbes, Director of Communications at the Food Standards Agency. She has over 2 decades of senior experience, including as a comms director at regulators Ofwat, the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, and the Advertising Standards Authority. Claire's also a senior visiting fellow at the London School of Economics, where she researches regulatory communications. Welcome, Claire.
Thanks very much, Marcial. Hello.
Hi. And Matt Wilson is from the Advertising Standards Authority. Matt has over 20 years' experience in regulation too. And at the ASA, Matt manages media and public affairs and is responsible for raising awareness of and trust in advertising regulation. And he's also worked previously at a TV production company. Welcome to you too, Matt.
Good morning, Marcial. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome, both of you. Now then, as I said, this is December's podcast and we're approaching Christmas. Some regulators have busy seasons. So Ofqual, which is the exams regulator, is obviously busy when it's overseeing A-levels and GCSEs. And IPSA, which is the MP's expenses regulator, is busy at election time. So before we get into the detail of how you regulate advertising and food in general, can I just ask you, is this a busy or different time of year for you as regulators? Matt, how about you?
Some Christmases periods are busier than others, and a key aspect of that, what keeps us busy, is incoming complaints. Obviously, we can't predict what will cause a spike in complaints or when, but there's definitely a recurrent theme each year as we approach Christmas in terms of our complaints inbox, and something that we can't actually do anything about as a regulator. So I'm starting out with a regulatory fail here, is people complaining about Christmas ads appearing too early. There is no rule in our advertising codes that prohibits Christmas ads appearing on the 1st of January. So if an advertiser was minded to, they could start, the next Christmas ads on the 1st of Jan. But some people don't like that. And often we get complaints that they're just too early and we don't like it at Christmas.
So what do you say when somebody says that I'm seeing Christmas ads in September?
We have to say we can't do anything about that. We're very sorry. And I think there's obviously a commercial decision there on the advertiser's behalf that when's too early? When do you fire the starting gun? Because, you risk alienating some would-be customers, but that's a decision they have to grapple with. We can't intervene just because people don't like it. There has to be something that's fundamentally misleading, harmful, or offensive about it. And we don't think that Christmas ads appearing early is likely to cause serious or widespread offence. It just might grate with people. But as we know, Christmas ads have become something of a sort of a cultural event, if I'm allowed to say that. Huge amounts of money and creative by some of the biggest brands are poured into making memorable campaigns. But we know from an ASA perspective that they don't always spread goodwill and bonhomie, where would-be customers have been really alienated and outraged is when any ad, even vaguely and mistakenly, of course, suggests that Father Christmas doesn't exist. That's when advertisers get into really, really deep trouble and really alienate customers.
Yes, I can imagine.
But there've been a couple of Christmas ads that have really prompted a public backlash over the years. There was a really memorable one in around 2014, I think. It was a Sainsbury's Christmas TV ad campaign, and it was in partnership with the British Legion. And it showed a story based on the 1914 Christmas Day truce during the First World War. And most of the complainants, and there were 823 of them, objected to the use of an event from the First World War to advertise a supermarket. And we investigated those complaints. And while we found that some had found the ad to be in poor taste, we didn't think it was likely to cause serious or widespread offence. And so we didn't ban it. But it shows how ads can polarise opinion. And in a slightly more fruity case, we intervened where a social media campaign by Poundland featured images of the Elf on the Shelf toys in a variety of sexualised poses with accompanying double entendres, and that prompted over 80 complaints about children seeing it being offensive and going against the spirit of Christmas. So in terms of our Christmas period, it very much depends on who's being bad or good in terms of how busy we are.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Matt. Now, over to you, Claire, on the food side, because as I say, some people eat food at Christmas time that they don't normally eat, whether that's turkey or Brussels sprouts. So is Christmas a different time of year for you?
Yes, it is. And I think everybody kind of starts to feel the pressure at this time of year, don't they? But it's obviously a particularly busy time in the food system. And so there's a few ways that Christmas kind of impacts directly on us as a regulator. So if you're going to be enjoying British turkey this Christmas, then that bird will have been inspected by one of our meat inspectors. Our meat inspectors work in abattoirs, and every single animal carcass is inspected before it enters the food chain. And there are about 12 million turkeys that they inspect every year. Wow. And of course, the vast majority of those are going to be inspected over the next few weeks. So they're getting ready for a particularly busy time. And Christmas is obviously a busy time of the year for the hospitality industry generally as well. And we oversee the food hygiene rating system. So if you're going into a restaurant or a takeaway or a cafe, you'll be familiar with the little green sticker, the scores on the doors, which shows the food hygiene rating system. So we oversee that as well. So if you're planning a Christmas meal out, then a top tip from me is to just check the food hygiene rating for the restaurant. You can do that on our website before you book. And go for something with a hygiene rating of 3 or above to make sure that you've got a safe Christmas meal out.
Fantastic. Well, really, really great that you've got that. And I'm sure we're going to be coming onto some of these details in a moment. So stepping back from the particular time of year we're at now, let's just find out a little bit more about how you both regulate. So looking at advertising first, Matt, the ASA says that it wants ads to be responsible, legal, decent, honest, truthful. You've told us a little bit about this already, but just tell us what you mean by that and how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, from the Advertising Standards Authority's perspective, this is about ads treating people fairly and ensuring that ads don't contain anything that's likely to be misleading or harmful or offensive or irresponsible. And in all of that, at the heart of our advertising rules and our work is that we place a particular emphasis on protecting young and vulnerable people from potential advertising-related harms. So, as I've sort of alluded to, advertising's a backdrop to and a cultural reference point in our everyday lives. We're surrounded by ads, whether we like it or not. And ads fund much of the media we enjoy for free. And we think at the best, they can inform, they can entertain, they can make us laugh, they can make us cry, and they can raise important awareness of societal issues. But we want people, and by people we mean consumers, business, society, to have confidence that they can trust the ads that they see and hear and engage with. So we take action to ban the proportionally small number of ads that break the rules, and that's by applying the advertising codes. And we think in doing so, we're helping maintain a level playing field for business so they can compete fairly, and ensuring that consumers themselves are being treated fairly, that they have that trust in the messages that they're seeing and when they're being sold to. And a big part of our work is we're rebalancing our regulation away from reactive complaints casework. So, we'll always receive complaints from members of the public or business who think ads are unfair or misleading or harmful. And that's always going to be a part of our work. But we're rebalancing it away towards proactive, tech-assisted intelligence gathering and monitoring enforcement. And that's particularly important in the online ecosystem, where the volume of ads requires us to be front foot and to take a project-based approach to identifying and tackling issues in the round. And we have a prevention rather than cure approach too. Our preference is that we don't want to intervene and ban ads. Our preference is for advertisers to get it right. So a big focus of our work is on equipping advertisers with the knowledge and the understanding of how and when the rules apply to them, and providing a suite of resources largely for free that provide a comprehensive range of guidance and advice on how to stick to the rules.
Yeah, and I know that all regulators listening to this will be in the same boat in terms of wanting to prevent harm rather than having to come in and tell people off after things have happened. So I'm sure that will resonate. And Claire, on your side, the FSA wants similarly food that you can trust. How do you go about doing that in general?
Absolutely. Yeah, the prevention of harm is key to us as well as a safety regulator. And trust is something that we think and talk about a lot, because we know that the vast majority of people, so it's over 70% of people, trust us to make sure that food is safe and that it is what it says it is. And to maintain that trust, we have what we describe as our 3 lines of defence. So first and foremost, there are over 500,000 food businesses in the UK, and the law says that the food that they sell must be safe and authentic. And of course, the vast majority of those food businesses are really responsible. They don't want to make their customers sick. So they're the first line of defence for us. And then the second line of defence are the local authorities across England, Wales and Northern Ireland, over 350 of them. And the environmental health inspectors and trading standards officers who work with them, they're the people who enforce food safety and standards on the ground. They go around and they inspect the food businesses. And then we would describe ourselves at the Food Standards Agency as the third line of defence. So we regulate the domestic food market. And to do that, we kind of oversee the work of local authorities. As I've already mentioned, we inspect over 1 billion animals that are slaughtered every year in the UK. And we manage the response to more than 2,000 food incidents as well. So for us, those 3 lines of defence work together at every stage of the food system to keep food safe.
And again, that model, I'm sure, is familiar with everybody in the regulatory world of relying on others to do that first check. And you think then it works more or less in practice then, and that the third line of defence that you represent is a backstop that is an effective mechanism for making sure that things don't fall through the cracks.
Yes, we know that, as I said, the vast majority of people in this country kind of trust that the food that they eat is safe and are trusting us to keep that safe. But as you say, we rely really heavily on our partners, on responsible businesses doing the right thing to protect their customers, and on the kind of the boots on the ground kind of local authority inspectors who are there both inspecting businesses, but also Matt referred to the amount of advice and guidance given to businesses. And if you're the owner of a small cafe or a restaurant, you can get a lot of advice and support from environmental health officers as well. When they're doing that inspection, a key part of their role is also to provide that kind of support for businesses too.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've heard about the way that you regulate advertising and food in your own domains, as it were. So let's bring this together, because there are lots of food ads, obviously, especially around this time of year. And so, you both care about food being what it says it is. Do you have examples of how you've regulated food or its advertising to ensure its safety? Matt, let's come back to you first.
Yeah, I mean, the legislation and the rules around food advertising are complex and lengthy, but it all really boils down to claims about nutrition, health or disease prevention being subject to various criteria and prohibitions, and that's reflected in our advertising code. So in practice, it means only health and nutrition claims that are authorised on the Great Britain Nutrition and Health Claims Register, which is easy to say, are permitted under our rules. And there are, separate to that, there are a dedicated set of rules around ads for high-fat, salt and sugar products that are designed to reduce children's exposure to them. So there's a big piece within the rules about ensuring HFSS, high-fat, salt and sugar foods, aren't advertised to children. So a couple of examples. Earlier this year, we had a paid-for Facebook ad for Just Eat, and it featured a text that stated, fancy a McMuffin in the morning, McNugget for lunch, or a big night in with a Big Mac, get them delivered right here. And a health campaign group who are really hot on this kind of thing, they challenged whether the ad was for a HFSS product and was directed at children through the selection of media and the context in which it appeared. We require advertisers, when doing online ads, to demonstrate that they have taken all reasonable steps including using all additional targeting tools available to them to ensure that HFSS products are directed away from under 16s and to minimise children's exposure to them. But in this case, we concluded that Just Eat hadn't taken sufficient care to ensure that the ad, which did promote HFSS products, wasn't directed at individuals under 16, and therefore we banned it. And moving away from sort of health and nutrition, we had a case involving a video on demand ad for Dairy which featured two girls hanging upside down from a five-a-side football goalpost and having a conversation about where food goes. And during that process, one of the girls opens up a Dairy cheese triangle and proceeds to eat it whilst hanging upside down. And we got complaints that it was encouraging dangerous behaviour that children might emulate, eating upside down, which is a choking hazard. And actually, at the end of that investigation, we considered it did, on balance, promote a potential harmful behaviour and broke the rules. And if you want an absolute lighter side of things example, and one of my all-time favourite ASA rulings, it involved complaints about a KFC mini fillet chicken burger ad, which we got complaints about it over-exaggerating the size of the product. It featured a woman holding the mini fillet chicken burger and eating it, and people said it's bigger in the ad than it is in real life. So we investigated that, and this is my all-time favourite advertiser's defence of their ad. They said that the model holding the burger may have had unusually small hands, which obviously lent itself to making the burger look bigger than it actually was. So we banned that ad, but that's one of my favourite advertisers' defences of their case.
It's fantastic to hear these examples, Matt, because I'm sure every regulator, and certainly the ones that I've been involved in, has got these detailed examples where, you think, goodness me, I never thought I'd be determining a regulatory view on a particular issue. I've got a particular example with a gazebo and MPs in mind that I'll save for another day. But Claire, how about you? Any examples of regulation of food, ads or otherwise, that you'd like to share?
So no, we leave the ads to Matt and his colleagues, but we've actually just been dealing with a major food incident, which I think gives a really good example of some of the work that we do to keep food safe and some of the challenges that are involved in that. So if anyone listening has a peanut allergy, they're very likely to be aware that in recent weeks we've issued guidance that people with peanut allergies should avoid products containing mustard. And that's because we became aware of the possible peanut contamination of mustard and mustard powder that was imported from India. And if you think about all the different uses for mustard or mustard powder, all the different food products that it goes into, you'll see that the risk was really quite broad. And of course, if you've got a peanut allergy and you inadvertently consume peanuts, that can be really very dangerous. So we had to launch an investigation to track down this contamination, to identify which batches of mustard and mustard powder had been contaminated, where it had come from, where it had been used. And while we were doing that, what was really important for us was to issue some advice to people with peanut allergy to avoid products containing mustard or mustard powder. And so we were issued that advice. But of course, while we were doing our investigation, the complexity of the food system with food that's imported from abroad and then may go through kind of several different stages of the supply chain before it ends up in a product that you have in your fridge or in your cupboard, that is really something that makes things complicated. The good news is that we have been able to complete that investigation. And last week, we were able to lift that advice so people with peanut allergies can continue to eat products as they would have done before. And we've been able to identify the specific products at risk of containing contaminated mustard and to be able to kind of flag those via our website. But it's been a really good example of, I think, the complexity and some of the challenge involved in food regulation with today's supply chains.
Absolutely. A very complex global world that we work in, and you both in your organisations are obviously manifestations of that. And it's good for those listening, if they or those that they know in their families or friends have allergies, to make sure that they look at the FSA website for advice on exactly those kinds of things.
Absolutely. And you can sign up for our alerts, which will flag any time that a product is recalled because of different allergens. So it really, if people do have allergies or friends or families, to encourage them to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's a really helpful tip. Now, let's look ahead. beyond Christmas into 2025. It's obviously a very fast-moving world with technology and now obviously the AI tools that are available. Matt, you mentioned some of this earlier on in the context of advertising, and obviously you've hinted that globalization, both of you, in social media particularly, are changing consumption patterns. So just focusing ahead on the big challenges for you as regulators, what in the context of tech and AI, what are they? Matt, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, technology and AI is embedded in our new 5-year strategy. So we've just launched that this year, and it's called AI-assisted collective ad regulation. So there's two parts of that. The AI-assisted is what it says on the tin. That's we have to have AI within our suite of regulatory tools, and collective ad regulation, it emphasizes the importance of partnership working with the FSA, the Gambling Commission, MHRA, and others, Ofcom. The partnership working is really key to successful regulation. And the technology bit, it has to be embedded in our regulation, because the challenges we face as a regulator are making sure that we're equipped to handle the scale of ads online and able to respond to the rapidly evolving media and technological landscape, particularly with the advent of things like generative AI. We feel strongly that we're doing that. We've established and continue to grow a data science team that's helping us to deliver world-leading regulation. We've got what we call our in-house built active ad monitoring system, and that's central to our monitoring capabilities. To give you a flavour of what that involves, in July last year, it enabled us to scan 100,000 ads a month. Wow. Today, it's over 3 million ads a month that we're scanning. Wow. So you can see the direction of travel and the scaling up that enables us to do.
So how many ads are there? Just kind of put that number in perspective of the volume of ads that there are out there.
Well, I don't know the absolute scale of the online ecosystem is vast and borderless, isn't it? But it's certainly a fair chunk. And what we're doing is, rather than casting our net to catch all, we're doing focused targeting monitoring, and even that's of 3 million ads a month. And it's identifying potential problem ads with these incredible algorithms and machine learning and large language models. And it flags to our human specialists for expert reviews those ads that are most likely to be a problem, and letting go the ones that we don't need to manually monitor. So we couldn't manually monitor that volume of ads. It would be impossible. And so it's improving our effectiveness and our efficiencies. And as a snapshot, so last year, our active ad monitoring system checked 580,000 social media posts just to look for illegal ads for prescription-only medicines. That's just one facet of what it's doing. It's being used across different sectors and different issues. And another key priority for us in terms of future-proofing our regulation is bringing online platforms and the intermediaries who serve ads online ever closer into our regulatory fold. So we've just completed a world-first online pilot where these platforms and the intermediaries, so there's lots going on. When you see an ad online, there's lots of moving parts in the background that we're oblivious to in terms of ad exchanges, real-time bidding, where your ad appears. It's served in a millisecond, but there's lots of complex things going on in terms of how those ads are served and where they appear. We're getting those bodies involved, and they signed up to this pilot, which is about them buying in further to developing a working relationship with us and helping promote compliance with the rules. So their buy-in is integral to the success of our regulation going forwards, which is why I obviously want them to be heavily involved in what we do, because without the buy-in of the platforms, our regulation online would be less effective.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. I'm really glad to know that you're engaging in that way in this, as you say, borderless online world. Claire, on the food side then, so again, the globalization, tech, it has an impact on every aspect of what you do, as you've already alluded to. So what do you see as the challenges going forward?
Yeah, I think like any regulator, we're working to keep pace with the kind of the scale and the pace of innovation. And you see that in food as much as any other sector. So we're seeing new business models. Obviously, I imagine everybody listening to this will be very familiar with online ordering of food. And Matt's already mentioned some of the kind of food aggregators and some of the scientific innovations that we're working with, such as whole genome sequencing. So we've got a different areas of regulatory reform that we're looking at to help us respond to this. And one example of that is how we're authorising new food products. So this is a responsibility that we took on when the UK left the EU. And a new food product is something that's not necessarily been available before, and it might be a product that brings a kind of different benefit. So, for example, it might be a food product that reduces cholesterol, or it might be a food product that's processed in a different way. So, for example, using ultraviolet light in the processing of the food to increase the quantities of vitamin D within it. And those types of food have to be authorised by us. We have to confirm that they're safe before they can be sold. And of course, it's not our role to decide which of them are going to be popular with consumers, but it is our role to make sure that they're safe. So we have about 400 of such products awaiting authorization. We're really looking to make sure that we can streamline that system of authorization. And crucial part of that is that businesses knowing what that we expect of them, and that the products that they're developing and support innovation, but also ensure safety. So that's quite a tangible example of how we're keeping pace with the innovation that's happening in the food system.
That's a really interesting example, Claire, and it touches on an issue that is relevant to all of us working in regulation, which is this balance that we're trying to strike all the time between protecting people from whatever harms it is that we're protecting them from, whether it's ads that are advertising high-fat products to children or food that might be unsafe because the product is a new one, on the one hand, but also not imposing such burdens, regulatory burdens, that they inhibit growth and economic development. And that's a concern of all governments, and last one and this one both. And that's always going to be the case because we always want our economy to grow and our businesses to thrive. So how briefly do you, it's a complex and difficult question, but how do you balance those two sometimes competing requirements to keep people safe on the one hand, but to allow businesses to grow on the other? Claire, can I come back to you first, and then I'll come to you, Matt?
Absolutely. I mean, food safety is always going to be our number one priority, but we believe very strongly that high standards are good for growth. High standards are good for business, and safety is essential. Responsible businesses don't want to make their customers sick. And I think if you walk up your local high street and you walk past the cafes or the takeaways, and you see those green stickers that businesses are proud to display when they have a 5 hygiene rating, the very top rating. Because they know that that's good for business. Regulation is good for business, and it can. So we think that responsible businesses welcome regulation, but at the same time, we're also keen to kind of work with businesses to be clear with them about the expectations that we have. So, as I mentioned, if people are applying to have a new food authorised, we're really keen that they understand the process that they need to go through that application. And they know what type of evidence that we're going to want to see to assure that that food is safe.
Great. And what about you on your side, Matt?
Yeah, I think we're just focused on making sure that we're not taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I think bearing in mind better regulation principles, proportionality and evidence-based regulation is really central to our approach. We have a sliding scale of interventions, and it's based on where the potential consumer detriment is. And where it's low, we won't necessarily launch straight into a formal investigation and publish rulings and haul an advertiser over the coals. There's an education approach here, which I mentioned earlier, so that prevention rather than cure, ensuring advertisers are equipped with the rules and the guidance they need to stick to the rules, but acting without fear or favour where there really is a serious issue to deal with.
Brilliant. Okay, well, this is absolutely fascinating conversation. I'm really grateful to you both. So, last question then. Here at the Institute of Regulation, we're trying to promote good practice in regulation to benefit not just regulators, but through them, the UK as a whole. And at this time of year, when people are giving presents, if you were to give a little Christmas present of good advice or a tip to regulatory colleagues on the work that you do, what would it be? Matt, and then I'll end with you, Claire.
I was slightly nervous about giving regulatory colleagues advice on how they might, what they might do and go about their jobs. But it's back to that proportionality and evidence-based point for me. I've always found working in regulation that opinions will be polarised about where regulators draw the line, with some parties wanting harsher sanctions and others complaining about sort of regulatory overreach. So my tip and advice is that if you find yourself in the middle of those two competing viewpoints, you're probably getting it right.
Well, that's very interesting, because the logo for the Institute of Regulation is a hawk and a dove, to try to capture exactly that dilemma that we all face. Claire, what's your Christmas tip?
Yeah, and I think my Christmas tip kind of harks back a bit to last month's podcast, which you were talking about regulatory communication, and that's very much my field. And I think it's really important as regulators that we get to know and understand the audiences that we're here to serve. One of the things I love about my job is that food is literally vital for life, and it touches on our lives in so many different ways. And Matt's alluded to that in advertising too. I think, describing it as a cultural event. Food is certainly a cultural event, a social event, important for nutrition, but also important for the economy and such like. And so I think understanding what this means in terms of regulation is really important. And for us, it plays into that key point about food being trusted by everybody. And it's my job to make sure that we can connect with different audiences. We listen to them and we understand how our work makes a difference to them. So that would be my top tip. And if I may have a quick second one, I wouldn't be speaking on behalf of the Food Standards Agency if I didn't encourage everybody to make sure that they defrost their turkey properly for Christmas.
Absolutely. Vital advice. And if you have any doubts about any food that you're about to consume at Christmas, do have a look at the FSA website, and I'm sure that you can find some helpful tips there as well. So it's been an absolutely fantastic conversation, and I'm sure that those listening will benefit from not just the Christmas tips that you've given, but some of the ways in which you're both regulating food and advertising respectively, because it will resonate with people who are regulating all kinds of different things across the UK and beyond. So thank you very much, Claire Forbes from the Food Standards Agency, Matt Wilson from the Advertising Standards Authority, and thanks also to our sound engineer, Neil Bowerman from Bowerman Audio Productions. So I hope you found this interesting, as I have. And if you do, please let your colleagues know about it and tune into future episodes where we'll discuss other issues of interest to regulators. And you can find other material and events relevant to regulation at the Institute of Regulation's website, ioregulation.org. So thank you for listening to me, Marcy Albu at the Regulation Podcast. Good luck with your own regulatory challenges, and do stay in touch with each other and with the Institute to make regulation the best it can. Thanks. Goodbye.